Live from a bunker in the heart of the Ozarks, a podcast that can't figure out which movies belong in 2020 and which belong in 2021. It's Sif Pop. Welcome to Sif Pop Weekly. We're streaming live most weekends, are available to download later in your podcast feed. Unless, of course, you're a patron.
Patrons get perks.
Patrons get those perks. Okay, I'm your host, Aaron Dicer, and I'd make him a cup of coffee anytime he wants one. It's Andrew Ormsby, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome, Andrew.
Coffee.
I know. That's why I'm in no threat by saying that at all. Each week we'll chat about movies, television, and whatever else from the pop culture universe is on our minds. And please welcome our guest this week. We picked a pretty intense week to have her on. It's Lo!
I am convinced that I am your only friend who is a parent. Nothing you can say will convince me otherwise.
It does seem like that's... Now, listen, last time you were on, we did The Old Guard.
Yes.
That's not really a movie about parenting.
No, it's not.
You
I'm
know,
specifically referencing Tully.
Yes. There are definite Tully vibes going on here today. It's absolutely wonderful to have you back, Lolo. We appreciate you being on and hanging out with us. We just recorded our members-only pre-show, which you can find if you are a Sift Pop member at our Patreon page, and kind of went over our 2020s and we're reminiscing about The Old Guard and doing that review just a few months ago in my mind, but literally 6 months ago on the calendar. It's crazy how time flies. Mm-hmm. In a year like this, where it seems like everything lasts forever, somehow some things seem like they still happened yesterday. I have no idea how all that works. But we're glad to have you back. And I do kind of right off the bat just want to apologize for the movies that you're coming on to talk about. I mean, it's really good to have your perspective. I'm honestly, especially on a week like this, glad to have a female voice on the show to talk about these two movies. But yeah, that was a lot to put you through, and we'll get into some of that here in a bit. You okay though? You doing all right?
Yeah. Oh,
okay.
Yeah. I mean, we live in a time and a place that is currently happening, but
that is
other than that,
those are
great.
Facts right there. We live in a time in a place that is currently happening.
Yep.
That is absolutely 100% true. Well, we love you, and we're glad you're back on and doing as well as could be expected. And we will head into some reviews first. Let's kick it off by taking a look at Pieces of a Woman. Martha and Sean are a Boston couple on the verge of parenthood whose lives change irrevocably when a home birth ends in unimaginable tragedy. Thus begins a year-long odyssey for Martha, who must navigate her grief while walking through fractious relationships with Sean and her mother, along with the midwife, who she now must face in court. I went back and forth a lot about what to give away as far as what we're talking about in this movie, because there is an experience to this movie. Where I landed, even though it is not personally where I usually land, which is I want to go in as blank as possible, and I did for this movie, had no clue, and I think there are parts of this movie that hit differently if you do that. But where I landed was for the sake of triggers, for the sake of trauma, for the sake of understanding what's going on here, and adding into that the movie itself and the marketing don't hide a lot of these things. It's not like this is something the movie itself is wanting to hide. I decided we would right off the bat, even in the description, kind of tell you what's going on in this movie. And I think that's going to allow us to have a conversation here. Now, having said that, if the description is all you want and then you want to see the movie before you hear anything else about kind of the details, I totally respect that. And I would say, go to the next review. That's fine. I totally understand that. But we are going to specifically talk about what takes place, especially in the first 30 minutes, I think, of this movie. And it is right off the bat, the hardest thing that, to kind of process through. And that's kind of what I was talking about when I somewhat half jokingly apologized for having you on this week. But we are talking about a situation where a home birth goes tragically wrong in that they lose their child. And the movie deals with the consequences of that loss and of the relationships and how the loss impacts those relationships. So I will say right off the bat, we've got Vanessa Kirby here, Shia LaBeouf, Ellen Burstyn, Molly Parker as the midwife, just kind of give you the cast. This is on Netflix, just came out, I believe, this week. And let's start with how we usually do. Again, weird question for a movie like this, but did you like it, love it, dislike it, hate it, or it was just okay? Andrew, why don't you start?
I liked it. I really did. I liked it. Not loved it, not really liked it, just straight up liked it.
What about you, Lo?
I would say the first half of this movie I liked and almost loved, and then as it went on, it kind of tainted it, and I would say overall, just okay.
I feel I would like to associate myself with the remarks of the woman from California. I very much feel that way. I thought, and let's just go ahead and get into it.
Yeah.
Because I'm going to land in the same place. High side of just okay, maybe low side of liked it, but probably high side of just okay. But that first half hour,
yes.
I thought I was in for one of the greatest movies ever. Like it is astonishing
you
work.
Literally,
that first half hour.
word for word, just said what I was about to say.
Yeah.
The first 30 minutes are what I thought was going to be. Oh, this is going to be the best movie ever.
Yeah.
Like, and then as soon as that 30 minutes, pieces of a woman pops up. I'm like, oh my gosh, that's how you're starting the movie.
Yeah.
But it never. The rest of the movie doesn't live up to that.
Yeah. Yeah, Lo, you looked like you were going to say something. Why don't you chime in?
Just I agree with that, and that was a really long shot, right? Like, or at least
it was a simulated oneer. Yeah, it was a simulated one shot. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I mean, I guess just getting into it, it was so visceral, and as somebody who has given birth in the past, rang very true to me. I did not have a home birth. I was in a hospital, but still there were so many moments that I was like, yep. Like on board. This feels very real. This feels the acting is great. The way that the camera is right on like their faces and in a way that you didn't notice it. I mean, like I noticed it because I'm like in my reviewer brain, like thinking about all of the technical aspects as I'm watching it, but I don't think it was distracting. It was stayed exactly where you wanted it to. And the sound work of her like crying in the background when it did leave her, and just, that entire opening sequence was some of the best film I've ever witnessed. Yeah.
Yeah. The camera work that you mentioned, just the acrobatics of figuring the camera movements in that scene were mind blowing to me. And the fact that it was so well thought out that when my brain wanted to switch into technical, it couldn't because the emotional held me. And that's a really interesting trick. When you're doing something so technically amazing that you still keep the audience focused on the story and the characters and what's going on with them. And a lot of that has to do with performances. I thought both Vanessa and Shia were incredible in that opening scene. Just to do what they did in the way that had to happen. Man, that first 30 minutes just absolutely blew me away and destroyed me in many ways. I mean, there's just I won't spoil necessarily the emotional moments of those first 30 minutes, but it's extremely compelling and intense, and something I was not prepared for. I had no clue that this was what this movie was about or what was about to happen, and it owned me for 30 minutes. And you're right, Andrew, that that title comes up and you're just like, oh boy, here we go. And I just wonder if there was no chance. I just wonder if there was no chance for the rest of the movie to live up to that 30 minutes. You know what I mean? Like if the feelings I'm having about the remainder of the film aren't unfair in some ways, you know, that I wanted it to live up to those first 30 minutes. Andrew, what do you think about that?
It's an interesting thought. It's difficult because I think that the dialogue and the I guess you could say the structure of that first 30 minutes seems so improv. Like the way they're talking to each other, it doesn't seem scripted at all. It seems like they're, you know, it's just all natural. Like, okay, yeah, you're doing great. Like it's like they were given a general sense of like, okay, here's a talking point for right here when you get to this, you know, stage act, or when you get to this stage piece, and then when you move over here, you have to talk about this. But in the time, just fill it with, you know, just, you know, how you would normally talk to somebody. But the rest of the movie feels very structured and very, the dialogue seems very scripted. There's a scene, I'd say kind of in the middle, but close to the end, where you have Vanessa Kirby and Burstyn,
Ellen Burstyn.
kind of, just yelling at each other. And I'm sitting there and I'm going, this feels very structured. Like I'm not getting a sense of like real emotion. Like it feels like you're just screaming dialogue at one another. I'm not feeling much of anything. But that first 30 minutes, maybe it's just because it's shot differently than the rest of the movie and it's structured differently, that it didn't transition well, like after the title, you know? Yeah.
Yeah, I think I like the second half, maybe even more than you guys did, which is interesting, Andrew, because your grade or your thoughts seem to be higher than mine. But I did think there were moments where the performances still came through well. I felt the emotion of it. I think we do go on a journey with the Martha character, and I do like where that journey goes. I like. It's interesting. I almost wonder if I wanted the second half maybe to be more Sorkin. Is that weird? Like an actual like court case, but it really wasn't about that. It really wasn't about a court case. It was about relationships. It was about the impact on emotion and the relationship between Martha and Elizabeth, and between Sean and Martha, and that's what the movie was interested in. And I almost wonder if I would have liked this movie more if it had been more interested in the ethical, moral dilemma of the courtroom case, because the resolution to the courtroom case was one of my favorite parts. I really enjoyed, and again, a weird word to use, but I really appreciated that moment and kind of where the movie took us on her journey. But I felt like it didn't resonate with me in a way that it could have had the movie been more about wrestling with the ethics as opposed to the relationships. Now, that's me putting my desires on the movie. That's not what the movie wanted to do. So I kind of have to take it at what it wanted to do. I thought it did that stuff just fine. You know, I wasn't as invested in it. Does that make sense, Lo?
Oh, absolutely. I have very similar thoughts to you, although I wish that it went in a different direction. So I feel like I hesitate to say problem, because I still really enjoyed the movie as a whole, but my issues with the second half are more that it felt very bloated to me, which is a weird thing to say in a movie that is very quiet and slow in some parts, like purposely so, not in a bad way. But I felt like I wanted them to focus a little bit more on the relationship between Martha and Sean than they did. And that might sound strange, but they gave Sean a background that I don't want to spoil necessarily, that sort of came up and then didn't really have consequences. And it felt like they were spending time on something that wasn't necessarily necessary. And then there was an issue that came up, and again, I hesitate to say issue, but I don't want to spoil it, with the with the main character's mother, as she started to deal with something that felt sort of unrelated and just added another layer to it. I guess I just feel like losing a child is already such a big thing to go through.
Mm-hmm.
And it almost felt like the screenwriter or the director or someone didn't feel like that was enough of a reason for this couple's relationship to fall apart. And I think that it is. And I think that that's worth exploring, that they sort of piled on all of these other issues to their relationship,
Mm-hmm.
and not just let that very real trauma that a lot of people in today's day and age don't necessarily give grieving parents. If it's not a child that was like around for a long time, like
Mm-hmm.
miscarriages and stillbirths and things
Mm-hmm.
like that are often not given the sort of time to grieve that they deserve. And I
Sure.
think that would have been a much more true way to look at this, as opposed to giving us a very true and visceral first 30 minutes and then sort of what felt more Hollywood and more
Mm-hmm.
like, here's all of this drama and this is a character piece. And it was jarring, I guess. I don't know.
Mm-hmm. No, I think that's fair. Andrew, do you have other thoughts you wanted to get into? Other positives, negatives, stuff you wanted to talk about?
First off, going off of other performances, I think if there's one performance that stands out through the film, it's Shia LaBeouf. I think that there are pieces where Vanessa Kirby is like killing it, like the beginning, and then there's a piece at the end in the court case, and then there's also a scene where somebody's getting something developed that really hit me hard. But I think like consistently Shia LaBeouf was the best. But it was interesting, but also I understand why the movie tried to do this. I thought this movie was going to be more about how this tragedy affects this couple as a whole, but it's not really interested, I don't think, telling the story of the couple. It's more how this affects Martha. And after that, it becomes Shia LaBeouf as Sean becomes like a side character, and like how his emotional, dealings with this tragedy affect her, not how it affects him, but like everything from then on is seen from her perspective. Mm-hmm. Again, I'm not saying that's bad. I'm saying it's a choice that the movie tries to make, but it was interesting because during that first 30 minutes that we all love so much, it seemed like this was a story of the couple. If this was the journey that they were going on, this beautiful thing that they were going to share together. And I thought that the rest of the movie was going to be how the tragedy, kind of affected both of them. And we got to see it equally, but that's not what the movie was interested in doing.
Yeah. I honestly, for me, that part of it was, I think, on the positive side. I was glad we were focused on her and how she was dealing with the relationships in her life. That is the story and the journey that I was most interested in. So that, I guess, that didn't necessarily stand out to me as something different than what I was expecting in that way. And I thought Vanessa was awesome all the way through. I thought she was incredible. I think Shia is great too. I know Shia's been through some stuff. I'm going to be completely honest here and say I don't know a lot of the controversy with the Shia thing. I just know it's there. I kind of am aware of when these clouds come over certain actors. So I know there was something a little while back with Shia. It's not something we need to get into here. I just didn't want to leave it unaddressed because I know some people will be thinking about that. But as an actor, which is all I can judge in this performance, yeah, you're right. He's incredible. He's absolutely astonishing in this role. Lo, any other thoughts that you wanted to bring up?
Just that this had a couple of moments in it that like very like tiny little moments that I could tell that this was written by a woman, which it was. There's a moment where we see Martha going back to work after all of this has happened, and she goes to the bathroom, and we see this shot of her pulling down what is essentially a diaper. Mm-hmm. And I really appreciated that because postpartum is no joke, and we don't see that a lot in and I know me, having only given birth once, I was completely shocked by some of the stuff that happens afterwards. So any like light that we can shine on that, I love. there's a moment where she's staring at a little girl in a store and she starts lactating, which is another thing that happens and people don't really talk about. And to have that happening while you're also dealing with the death of the reason that would be happening with your body is such a I mean, like, I hesitate to say inspired choice, because again, this is such a heavy movie, but it's an amazing choice to make, to show that sort of that your body doesn't necessarily know that it doesn't need to be doing these things anymore, and you're still dealing with the ramifications of having just given birth, which is a huge thing for your body to go through. So yeah, those two moments like really stood out to me as like just very like, oh, these rang so true to me, that those were some of the moments that I just like, I loved the most after that first 30-minute scene.
Yeah, I am totally with you. There's an authenticity to that stuff that is so valuable and so important. There's a normalization to that stuff that is so valuable, important for moms to see, for all of us to see, for those who have never given birth to see, to understand it fuller. I know one of the things I actually really appreciated about the first 30 minutes, beyond the stuff we've already talked about, was the authenticity of the birthing experience. I felt like, I've been in 4 birthing experiences. I have 4 children. And I had really never seen represented on screen how it really kind of is. And this, to the best of my remembrance, is the most authentic I've ever seen it portrayed, through the way, not just through the medical things, like the way contractions work, the breathing, the pushing, all that kind of stuff, but also in the emotional response. Because so often in movies, even serious ones, we'll get the woman who's in birth pains turning into a monster, and turning into, swearing at everybody and get out of the room. And I'm not, by the way, saying that never happens. I'm just saying that's not the fullness of that experience, right? And there was something that Vanessa was doing in that scene that just felt very real to me, that she was really giving birth. And I just, that performance in that first 30 minutes is just astonishing to me. So I wanted to say that, kind of piggybacking off of what you were talking about, the authenticity of the post-birth experience. I felt that as well in the birthing experience. From my perspective, as someone who's been in the room, not someone who's given birth, but as someone who's been in the room. So yeah, definitely. Final thoughts? Anything else we want to talk about with Pieces of a Woman? This is where you might recommend it, say who might enjoy this, who might benefit from it. Andrew, why don't you go first?
For anything else, if for nothing else, you have to watch this just for that opening shot, which is so good. I still think that the rest of the movie is worth watching, but I would tell people, hey, if for nothing else, you just got to see it for that opening shot, which is so insanely good.
Lo, I'm going to give you the last word. I would say, like Andrew said, I think it's worth a watch for the opening, for many other reasons, not least of which is you probably already have Netflix. And my only caveat is, of course, trauma triggers, those kind of things. Do know you are going to be in a very emotional, traumatic situation with characters. And so, that would be the only caution. Other than that, yeah, I think there's real value in checking this one out. Lo?
I would also say that, yeah, definitely. I would say if you're somebody who doesn't necessarily look into what movies is about beforehand, this might be one to peep that Wikipedia beforehand. I did, because I am the complete opposite end of the spectrum from Sir Dicer over here, where I watch everything. I found out everything I can. I struggle with very, very bad anxiety. And I find that kind of knowing the beats of a movie beforehand, especially when it's an intense one like this, really helped me and help me enjoy the movie more.
Yeah, no, that's very valid.
As far as triggers go, I would say if you are a person who might potentially want to give birth in the future, as real as this is, I might skip it, because I know, for me at least, how terrifying birth can be when you've never done it before. And I don't think that this is something that you need in your head. As much as there is some truth there, as much as there is some really great performances, but if you've never done it before, I think maybe you could skip it until after. It might be a little much. I mean, obviously people are going to know their own sensibilities beforehand, better than I would, but I would not have liked to have seen this before I gave birth. it would have terrified me, I guess.
Yeah, I can totally understand that. And I think again is probably a testament to the skill of the movie itself. That you would say something like that. So there you go. That's Pieces of a Woman. It is on Netflix, available to stream now. All right, let's move on to The Assistant. Jane, a recent college graduate and aspiring film producer, just landed her dream job as a junior assistant to a powerful entertainment mogul. Her day is much like any other assistant, making coffee, ordering lunch, arranging travel accommodations, and taking phone messages. But as Jane follows her daily routine, she grows increasingly aware of the abuse and insidiously colors every aspect of her workday. This is available on Hulu. It has been out for a while. It has come to my attention because I do believe, and I could be wrong about this, I may have misseen something, but I watched this movie because I believe it was competing for awards this year. So for whatever the release situation was, they decided they were going to put it out for possible awards contention this year, even though technically I think it came out not last year, the year before last year, 2019, I think is technically when it dropped. But we checked it out. I checked it out and wanted us to give it a review today. Again, as mentioned, it is on Hulu. So this stars my favorite girl from Ozark, Julia Garner, in kind of the singular role of this movie, as it is a day in the life type movie. And then I think Matthew McFadden comes in for a beat there in a scene. Patrick Wilson shows up at one point
at an uncredited role.
Yeah.
Meant to be playing himself, right? Like
I think that was the idea.
Yeah.
Possibly.
They don't really draw attention to it, but I was like, he's supposed to be him, right?
So this is a day in the life. It literally follows the Jane character from the moment she awakes until the moment she's heading home, to crash, and one day in her life. So what did you guys think? Did you like it, love it, dislike it, hate it, or was just okay? And Lo, why don't you kick us off on this one?
I would say again that I kind of settled on like it for this.
Okay.
I was quite bored for the first 3/4 of the movie and intensely interested for the last 3/4 of the movie. Basically, once Matthew McFadden, once Mr. Darcy was on my screen, I like that scene moving forward. I was very invested, but I was not super into it until that last.
I think that happens at about the halfway point, doesn't it?
I think I looked at the thing and it felt like it was about 3/4, but half. As soon as that happened, that was where I really started to get invested.
It's funny. I know him more from Succession, the TV show Succession, and you would know him from Mr. Darcy, of course.
Of course.
Andrew, where did you land?
Because I know the subject material is so important, I won't say I hated it. So I'll land on I really didn't like it.
Fair enough. No, that's absolutely appropriate. I certainly like this definitely more than Andrew, probably even more than Lo. I'm on a high side of liked it on this one.
I'm on low side of liked it.
Yeah. I'm on the high side of liked it on this one. And so I guess I'll kind of kick us off as we start to talk about it. I think Julia Garner is doing something here that is very tricky for an actor to do, which is to play a role that is still on the surface and tumultuous underneath. And it is one of the trickiest things to do. And I don't know that she nails it for the entire thing, but she nailed it enough for me that once I was on board with her, which was pretty quickly for me, I could feel what she was going through. And I think the subtlety of it is why I end up really liking this movie, because there are enough films. And by the way, the themes and the messages here are about being a woman in the workplace, about the idea of what it means to have power dynamics in a workplace and how that relates to gender and, so many of the things that we've been seeing with the Me Too movement and different, aspects like that. Specifically how it relates in Hollywood. All of these kind of things are happening here. But there's a subtlety to this that is different from, let's say, Bombshell, that came out last year, I believe, where it's all right there, it's intense, it's louder, and this is kind of the quiet version of, this is the subtlety of what that day looks like and why things don't change and why there is why there could be horrible things going on, and yet how difficult it is to figure out a way to verbalize that, to challenge that, how the power dynamics work. All that stuff was brought to me in this movie in a way that I don't think I had felt it that much before. And that means a lot to me. I really felt the character in this movie and what they were going through in a way that I don't know that I had experienced before. And that kind of character empathy and the development of character empathy for me is a big deal. And so that's always going to kind of elevate things up for me. So that's kind of why I liked it. Do you guys have any response to that? Did you feel the same way, differently? What are you guys thinking? Whoever wants to chime in.
I'll let Lo go.
I do think that shining a light on the types of things that women can go through in the workplace is important. And like you said, especially in our current day and age where those things are finally kind of coming to light. I guess I'm just sick of movies that are about movies. I'm sick
about the movie industry.
I'm sick of Hollywood. So like for me, I was like, oh, Hollywood producers are power hungry jerks. Cool. Like, yeah. So it felt like as she is like realizing what's happening, I'm like, honey.
Oh, so
like,
you were okay. So let's address this real quickly, because did you think this was modern day?
Yes.
Yeah.
I think this was 10 years ago. I think this was at least 10 years ago. I was looking at the computer screens. I was looking at the Blackberries. I think this is not modern day. I think this.
Interesting.
So that may have shaded completely my view on this, because I was thinking we're dealing with something that's happening before kind of this awakening we've had as a culture.
Well, even if it was, I would say that most women are aware
Wouldn't
that things
be that
are
naive.
like this. Well, not that she's naive as a character, but I guess just as an audience member, I was like, this is nothing that is happening is surprising to me. Like, I think that the movie wanted us to sort of slowly be like, oh, this bad thing is happening. And I, from like the get-go, like as soon as we saw, I think like some headshots at one point, I was like, okay, I know exactly what's happening here.
Right.
And maybe it wasn't trying to deliver a twist, but to me it sort of felt like it was, or maybe not a twist, but like a discovery as she is sort of discovering what's happening.
Yeah.
Okay. And I just kind of felt like, I don't know, I felt like I was being shown something that I was very aware of and like not really gaining any like new information.
Sure.
I don't know.
Andrew, I want to hear your opinion on this, but I will just say the idea of the information we have as the audience, I thought was different than the information she had internally. My feeling on what was going on was that we all knew what was going on from the beginning, but that she, as a naive young girl just going to Hollywood, was figuring it out. And I think the turning point that you had was the turning point that she had. You know, I think that HR scene was her turning point, where she was like, oh.
And that's probably why I liked the second part of the movie more, because I was finally like, all right, yes, thank you. Like, you know what's going on. I know what's going on. Like, let's. Yeah.
Yeah. Andrew, what are you thinking about all this?
Well, I will say that the McFadden scene is for me, the only good scene in the entire movie.
Sure.
The rest of the movie, I felt, yes, there are scenes where she's picking up clues in here and there, but I think about 80% of the rest of that is just mundane assistant chores and tasks. And, like, I don't need to see all of this,
Yeah, but there was stuff going on even there in the office dynamic.
Yeah,
that's what I'm saying. Like, there's scenes where she's like picking up clues and stuff like that. But then there's scenes where she's making shakes for like 5 minutes, like just at a blender putting stuff in. And I'm like, I don't need this. I don't need this. And then like where she's just said, there's time where she goes to the printer and she's like printing off headshots, with, stuff like that. But
so you're saying the movie took place over an 18-hour period and it felt like it took the full 18 hours for you.
Okay. I want to tell you
it was
something.
in real time.
I'm not joking. I literally did this. After I watched the movie, I started it back over and kept hitting the 10-second like fast forward thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I got the exact same amount of information. it's insane. But as for talking about Vanessa, or not Vanessa, wrong movie,
Julia Garner.
Julia Gardner. Whenever there's the McFadden scene, yeah, it's great because you find out that she's been working for this producer for about 2 months now, and after I learned that, that's whenever I'm with Lo, and I'm like, really, with as unabashedly and unapologetically this guy has been seducing women, it took you 2 months to pick up on what he's doing. Yeah, I don't want to come off of as like, how is this naive young girl not picking up on this stuff? But at the same time, if he's this nonchalant and just carte blanche with everything, like right out in the open, like you have people saying, "Hey, don't sit on that couch," or "Hey, you know what he's doing." Like people are openly talking. People around her are openly talking about the kind of person her boss is. That it took, not that it took her 2 months to go to HR, but that it took her 2 months to realize what was going on, and that if the movie had made it to where it felt like she'd known for a while, but after meeting a specific girl, she's like, okay, I've had enough. And then she goes to HR. That would have been a better movie, I think. But there's a naivety to the way that Julie Garner portrays this character that I don't know. It just didn't work for me.
Let me offer a possibility, and let me know what you guys think about this. I wonder if,
and real quick, I don't want it to seem like I'm blaming her, because
no, totally get it, man. Yeah,
it's a fake character in a movie that somebody wrote, and that's how we're looking at it.
Yeah. I wonder if the structure of the movie handcuffed its ability to do what you wanted it to do. In other words, if this character had been in a regular movie that takes place over those 2 months, right? You could have seen her 2 weeks in spot a small clue, start thinking about it. Another week after that, something else happens, and then you get the earring or whatever it might be that she feels is her first solid proof that something's going on, and that's when she decides, oh, I guess this is when I can do something about it, right?
Yeah.
So I wonder if the structure of the movie, which wanted to be a day in the life, because I think part of the point of this movie, and probably the reason I like it, is the banality of The Office, put in the same aspect of the tragedy and the trauma of what's happening in that office. I think that's very powerful. I liked what the movie chose to do with the structure. I thought that benefited it. But I do wonder if it maybe handcuffed it for our more what we're used to as a progression of a character, because we had to see this progression over one day. And we all know that doesn't happen in one day. What this one day represents for her is proof, not necessarily figuring it all out, but the proof to know what has been going on. And so to represent that in that character's journey in one day probably handcuffed it from feeling as authentic or as realistic as maybe you wanted it to. Does that make sense? Is that fair?
I'll agree with that, because if you were to stretch this out over a month or so, where she's picking up a clue here and there, I think the movie would have been better served. I don't see any real benefit to making this a day in the life of movie. I don't see how squishing so much, like I don't want to say detective work, but finding clues, and hearing office gossip, stuff like that, cramming all that into one day seems unnecessary, and it actually, for me, hinders what I think otherwise could have been a very powerful way of telling a very important story.
I think we're supposed to enter the day. I think she is supposed to enter the day aware and end the day certain. I think that's what they're going for. And I think maybe it feels too much like she enters the day completely unaware. And I don't think that's what they're going for. I think she is supposed to be aware that there's something weird, at least weird, probably wrong going on, and then becomes more certain throughout the day and more certain of what she should do about it. See, that's the process she's going through, is like, what is going on? What do I know? What do I have as proof? And then also, how do I respond? And that's difficult. Like I think that's what the movie's trying to wrestle with.
Yeah.
Lo, what were you going to say?
I have two things to say. There's as far as like clues go, for me enjoying this movie, and I did like it. I wasn't like, I didn't hate it. I mean, I
Right.
liked it. I said I liked
Yeah.
it. I just am critical.
Mhm.
There's a moment where she is quite early on scrubbing fluids off of a sofa. And at that point, I'm like, what are you like? How can you not be going to HR at like this moment right here? Like that you are not just finding an earring, not just watching a parade of women go in and out, but you are like disposing of like evidence.
I don't think we're supposed to think she knew what that was, though.
How?
I don't know. People
Okay,
people
Aaron,
spill
come on.
creamer. I don't know. I'm trying not to be too weird about
Aaron,
it, but I'm just saying.
I gave you some leniency
Listen, I'm a
with
naive
finding it all
person,
out in one
okay?
day. Yeah.
I am a naive person. I really am. I have a bit of naivete to me, and so I guess I there are just things you don't know until you know. Like, I mean,
fair enough.
you know, but anyhow,
And
you're probably right.
My second thing is that I really enjoyed, and this is like very background to what the movie wants to be about. I really enjoyed her starting the day sort of standoffish with the other two assistants, with the two male assistants who are credited as male assistant 1 and male assistant 2, which I think is very funny. And by the end of the day, I sort of feel like she's gotten to this point where she kind of has this camaraderie with them, even though neither of them are necessarily great people, especially one of them I didn't love. But by the end, they're there helping her with a certain task that she was sort of doing kind of on her own, and only one of them had helped her with earlier. And there's this sort of moment where they say, you know, you can come to us, right? Like that's a line that's said, and I'm like, oh, I actually really appreciate that. And I know that there is still some like, you should have come to us instead of going to HR.
Right.
But which is awful. But I also think that, at least from my point of view, and maybe this is me being naive, I sort of feel like they were like, we knew that HR wouldn't have done anything for you.
Yeah,
and
that's what I got from that.
Us. And even though we couldn't do anything about it, we would still be able to sort of like commiserate with you and like, you know.
The movie does an interesting thing there, right? Because it allows us empathy for those characters and to see them as human beings, you know, as not part of, you know, not awful people, but at the same time allows them still to be guilty of the loss of perspective, to still to be guilty of not being, boy, I'm going to use a loaded word, woke enough to see what was going on. That word comes from awakening, right? Like it comes from the idea that even though they were, you know, the movie allows us to go, these people really do care about her, it seems, and they really do want to help, but their version of help isn't awake to what the real problem is. And that's a tricky thing to balance. And
I thought they did a really good job with that.
Yeah, I thought so too. I thought so too. All right, any other thoughts before we get to our final recommends?
How did you guys feel about the movie not really putting a face on our antagonist?
He sounded like a cartoon villain every time he spoke on the phone.
He did.
I had to put on subtitles.
He's like, how dare you? Like, he was like Batman.
I had to put on subtitles because I couldn't understand anything she was saying whenever she talked to somebody on the phone.
Yeah.
Oh, I always watch things subtitles.
Yeah, I always have subtitles on, so yeah.
I can't multitask where I'm like looking down, looking up, looking down, looking up.
You get used to it after a point, right?
I grew up with subtitles.
Yeah. There comes a point where you get used to the idea of accepting what you can interpret on the screen and then just glancing at the subtitles when you feel like you need extra context. So yeah, it's interesting how you get used to it after a while. I started watching everything with subtitles about, I'm going to say about a year and a half ago. And I haven't gone back. It just makes it easier than having to rewind and turn them on if I don't, you know, hear something in that way. Any other thoughts? Oh, you asked a question though, Andrew. Did we answer your question? What was the question you asked? How we felt about
Loaded. How did you feel about them not putting a face on the antagonist?
It's definitely a choice. I think overall I didn't like that choice. Overall, I feel like there's a. I think I understand the choice because I don't think the movie isn't about that character. It's about something bigger than that character. And I think what the movie is doing is saying it could be anybody. It's like, you know, now you don't get to put all your anger or frustration onto this physical manifestation. You have to live with it, understanding it could be anybody. I think that's what the movie's trying to do purposefully. But in this specific case, just as a human being, I could have used that, and maybe the movie's doing the right thing by not giving it to me. I don't know. I just, it's kind of what I wanted. But
Yeah.
I believed her being scared of him. Her acting, she was scared of him. She was absolutely ashamed and shaken every time that she had an interaction with him. And I think that her acting was fantastic. I do not like the voice acting of him. I don't think that he warranted those reactions. And I think if they had a physical presence, especially if he was a very physically large guy, to be both physically and like vocally intimidating, I would have believed the interactions a little bit more, even though she was doing all the work that she needed to be doing in her reaction to him.
I don't think that performance was all that great either, because what he's mostly doing on the phone is gaslighting, right? Like there's a lot of explaining the world to her in a way that puts him in the best position, gives him the power, all that kind of stuff, and creates this false idea of what she has to do. Like there's a lot of gaslighting going on. And people who gaslight don't sound like they're gaslighting. There's a reason they get away with it a lot of times, is because they are good communicators, because they sound like they do actually care and that there is empathy there. And you're right, there was a little too cartoonish. That voice just felt a little.
Email, he emailed her back once and was like, it's okay. I'm hard on you because I want to make you
great.
The
email worked. Yeah.
That was fantastic.
Yeah. Interesting. Okay, are we ready for final thoughts, final recommends? Lo, why don't you go first?
I mean, as much as I've sort of laid into this movie a lot, I feel like I've been very harsh on it. I still liked it. And I think that specifically if you tend to like this type of movie, which is to say awards bait that happens to be about like Hollywood is like a genre of itself, I think that it does that very well. I just think I am very disillusioned with that genre. That I personally am like, I could take or leave movies that are about making movies, which you guys will make fun of me for when we talk about best ever day in the life movies later. But in general, if it's just a movie,
there's always exceptions to the rule.
Yeah,
of course.
Yeah.
This one didn't hit it for me.
Yeah.
I think Andrew, why don't you go next?
Oh, you know me, I'm not going to recommend this. No. At all. I think that there is way too much exposition of her doing the mundane tasks and not enough of the I gotcha, or I'm figuring it out stuff. Way too much of showing me what her day-to-day is like, because I'm not gonna lie, it's not interesting. I mean, yes, I know it's hard work, it's tedious, but that there's a difference between tedious and hard work, and there's there has to be an entertainment value to a movie to make that keeps you invested. And there's nothing in this that kept me invested, except for that McFadden scene. If that was a short, I would have loved it, but it's not. It's an hour and a half movie.
Sure. I think it's pretty obvious. I'm going to recommend it. I really think it's valuable. I thought it was good, and I enjoyed the central performance specifically is kind of what kept me in it. I felt similar to Lo in that I wasn't in it until I was in it, and then I was really in it. But I think it happened quicker for me. I think I got there faster. I think it was, after the first 5 to 10 minutes of, okay, we're watching every moment of the wake up process. Like, why are we doing this? Like that kind of thing. And then, honestly, similar to First Cow this year. I don't know if either of you got a chance to check out First Cow.
Yeah, we reviewed it. I hated that too, but you liked it.
And it's a very similar thing where the first 5 minutes I'm going, really, this is the pace we're going with? Like this is as boring as we're going to watch a freighter go from one side of the screen to the other in real time. But then there's something, I think they reset almost your chemistry by doing that. And then you kind of find yourself, falling into it. And I was into it probably after about 10, 15 minutes. And then I was along for the ride. So yeah, it's a recommend from me.
Yeah, I hated First Cow too. So
this is fair. Hey, you're consistent. All right, let us move on to the best ever challenge. But before we do, just a thank you to our amazing Sif Pop members. We love you. We appreciate you. We could not do what we do without you. It's pretty amazing to look over there and know that people are supporting what we do here financially, allowing us to have the equipment that we need, the fees to do the streaming, all that kind of stuff comes from you. And so thank you for doing that. As a thank you for that, we like to give you some fun stuff. You can check out all the details at the Patreon. But they include a weekly bonus podcast where we have a topic that we talk about. And so Lo joined us for that this week and kind of talked about Lo's Year in Movies 2020. And lots of amazing old guard talk in there, and maybe even a little swing kids.
I really needed to have 2 episodes where I was guest hosting and we talked about old guard. One was not enough.
That's right. Yeah. No. Every week, you're going to hear Lo's new podcast on the Studio DNA Podcast Network called The Old Guard. And no, it was great stuff. It was a fun conversation, and you can check it out if you are a Sif Pop member. Again, that is patreon.com/SifPop. All right, let's get into the best ever challenge. We are doing the best ever day in the life movies. Now, this is an interesting topic because really, if you want to put rules on it, you're looking at movies that happen in one day. Now, every movie that happens in one day doesn't necessarily feel like a day in the life movie. There are some movies that happen in the same day that I think like real-time movies don't feel like day in the life. They just feel like they happen in one place. But we're going to count them all. Anything that happens over the course of one day, we're going to count it.
I stretched that rule so far. I did not follow that rule. Sorry.
That is fine. It is okay. I
looked at the list because there's like a Wikipedia list that's like movies that take place in 24 hours. I have seen like 5 of those movies and did not love some of them. So I was like, you know what?
Nice.
I'm stretching these rules.
So yeah, let's go over it. We'll go from number 5 to number 1, and possibly you can trump anybody that says a movie that you want to say higher, and do it that way. So I'm not sure how I feel about us yelling Trump, right? Like for this anymore.
Hey,
maybe we have to change
tradition,
that,
man. If you can come up with a different word besides Trump, then I'll do it.
All right. We'll come up with a different word, maybe.
Get your thesaurus out.
That's right. All right, let's start at number 5, and Lo, you have the honor of kicking us off, and then Andrew, and then we'll just keep going around. So what's your number 5?
So number 5 is not a movie that takes place over one day. It is in fact a movie that takes place over an entire life, but kind of takes place in one day, and that is It's a Wonderful Life. I stretched this. When I was thinking of day in the life movies, I thought, you know what? I really want these to be movies that are like, if I'm going to stretch it and have it not take place over a single day, I want it to be about the sort of mundane minutia of daily life. So for me, It's a Wonderful Life, the reason that this fits is because it's a lot about sort of just these daily mundane occurrences that happen to our main character that bring him to a very specific point in his life. And if we're getting technical, all of those things are being shown to our lovely angel Clarence in a single evening. So it counts.
I think you're fine counting this because there's an interesting thing that happens. You're right. This movie does cut to an entire life. That's what it's all about. But the movie is like all like backstory, and then like 15 minutes at the end of actual movie. It's like that's what
also the main plot of the movie is this one very bad day. It is this one bad day where just everything goes wrong for George Bailey.
So you can consider all that stuff flashback.
Suicide. Yeah. So I think that it still is sort of day in the life.
We'll give it to you.
And it's just one of my all-time favorite movies. So I was like,
no, I'm with you.
I'm not ready to say goodbye to Christmas yet.
I will say, I just recently released my favorite 200 movies of all time on Letterboxd, and all 5 of mine that I will talk about today are on that list. So there are some good ones as far as I'm concerned. Andrew, what do you got at number 5?
Well, I have my top 3 are in my top 100 movies of all time. I think besides one, every single one of these is a real time movie. So they're not only a day in the life, but they're also like in real time for that 2 hours. So I'm going to start off at number 5 with Locke.
Yeah, that just missed my list. Yeah, it's so good. Yeah.
This
I
movie
have
is
never heard of that.
oh, get ready.
But you're going to come
This
out.
is the most fascinating synopsis for a movie you've ever heard. You ready for this?
Ready.
It's Tom Hardy driving a car, talking to people about concrete.
Loved it. Loved it.
Oh, that's it.
2016. How did I miss it? No.
Yeah,
No.
it's came out 2013, I think.
Yeah, that's the wrong.
Is this
Wrong.
a Stephen Knight movie? I can't remember. I think it might be a Stephen Knight movie. Anyway,
Whatever.
if it is a Stephen Knight movie. I love Stephen Knight. I think he's great. This movie, there's more to it than that. There's also a reason why he's talking to people about concrete. But there's other parts to it, but every single phone call he makes, he's using his car to like call people and stuff.
Mhm.
Every single phone call he makes, I am on the edge of my seat. Like, oh my gosh, I've never cared more about concrete or the other stuff that he's talking about. I'm like, I care so much. Tom Hardy, you're amazing. Actually, I think this might be Tom Holland's first movie. He's
a voice in this. Yeah.
There's a lot of
Well,
voice actors because
he was-
actually everybody is a voice actor in this movie besides Tom Hardy because it's just the camera in the car.
Yeah, you're just in the car with Tom Hardy, Locke, for a couple hours as he deals with phone conversations about work and life, and it's astonishingly good.
Yeah,
So
it's so good. I love this movie.
I have no qualms with that choice.
All right, so that's my number 5. What's your number 5, Sir Dicer?
My number 5 will probably get trumped, maybe not. This is where I had 1917. On my list. It's recent enough.
It was like one of the first in my honorable mentions. So by the way, I have so many honorable mentions.
Yeah. I have a few as well. I tried to keep my top 5 to ones that I felt like honored both the rules of the topic as well as kind of the spirit of the topic. And this is, I believe, this is the only real-time one I have in my top 5. And because the real-time one was just not quite the spirit of the idea to me personally, and so I wanted to kind of honor some other ones. But 1917 still feels like a day in the life. It really does, even though it takes place over.
It's a 24-hour period.
Yeah.
Because
you're right.
He gets knocked out, and then
that's right. Now I
know what you're
understand why.
saying.
Yeah. And so technically this isn't a real-time movie. It's just a one-shot movie, which is different. So I had totally forgotten about that, but that's why it feels like that to me. It really does feel like a day in the life of these soldiers and the task that they're trying to accomplish. It's such a technically impressive movie, but it's also a very well done, emotionally captivating movie as well. So I had it at number 5.
Good call.
Lo, what do you got at number 4?
Number 4 is The Breakfast Club.
Good choice. Just missed my list. Yeah.
Yeah, it's one of my all-time favorite movies. And it does take place in a single detention session. And I mean, like, gosh, I don't know what else I can say about The Breakfast Club. I feel like people have probably talked this movie to death. It is very well known, but it's a movie that I think does a really good job of creating vastly different characters and getting you into their different life troubles. And it feels very much, even though a lot of these characters, it's not their daily life to be in detention, it does still feel very like average, I guess. I don't know how else to. The stakes are so low on this movie, but they feel so high to the characters, so it feels very daily. I really, really wanted all of these movies to feel very much like they were about very mundane daily things, as opposed to just taking place over 24 hours or less.
Yeah. No, The Breakfast Club is a great choice. Just missed my list. Certainly a pretty incredible movie, and honestly, I'm glad that you heeded their request and didn't forget about them. That's very, very kind of you. All right, what do you got at number 4, Mr. Andrew?
Number 4 is where I have Airplane.
It's good. Yeah, no, that's true.
This is I don't know how many times we've talked about this movie. It's one of the funniest movies of all time. It's one of the most quotable movies of all time. I've rewatched it I think a week or two ago, and every single time I watch it, I pick up something new, because every single time you're focused on just quoting along with this movie, the old lady who speaks jive, or the autopilot, or I just want to wish you both good luck. We're all counting on you. Just how literal everything in this movie is brilliant. I love it.
Very nice. Yeah, also a plot point on the latest episode of This Is Us. If anybody's watching that show, Airplane is one of the plot points on the most recent episode. All right,
Your number 4.
My number 4 is Fruitvale Station.
Man, I need to see this movie.
Yeah, you do. You most definitely do. Fruitvale Station has introduced us to the amazing director Ryan Coogler, and also to one of his favorite muses as well. This is a pretty incredible story of the day in the life of this man and what happened to him. It is unfortunately a way too common story, and a story that will be difficult to watch, but it is extremely powerful, and something I would think you should definitely check out. I've mentioned it many times before, and it's just kind of, Coogler, Michael B. Jordan, kind of introducing themselves to the world in an incredible story. And it was really one of the first, because I think this was the first year, maybe the second year, that I was in the Critics' Choice Association. And it was one of my first experiences getting a screener and just trying to work my way through screeners and just being like stopped in my tracks and just being like, I'm going to love these surprises as they continue to happen, and, reviewing movies. So, but yeah, Fruitvale Station, definitely one you want to check out. Lo, what do you got at number 3?
Number 3 is this is my last one that's a stretch that isn't technically
fair enough.
So
Fair
I only
enough.
had 2 on the list that aren't in a single day. Napoleon Dynamite, which takes place over months and months.
How
and
is
months.
that a day in your? Okay, listen, I gave you It's a Wonderful Life.
No. I said that I stretched the rules. Okay.
Yeah. Tell me how.
Okay. This movie is only about daily life. That is the plot of this movie.
Okay.
Small town America.
This
one kid and the things that he gets up to in his daily life. Maybe not in a single day.
No, not at all in a single day.
But it is daily life. Listen,
listen,
you guys. I wasn't going to put Die Hard on this list.
Why?
That's fair.
Because I don't like Die Hard.
Lo, we love you. We want you back anytime. You stretched it too far. You broke the category.
Listen, I sat there with my husband, like, give me some movies that take place in 24 hours, because this list is not doing it for me.
Okay.
Well, I have 20. I have 20 other movies I can recommend you then.
Well, I just, for whatever reason, a blind spot in my movie viewing has been movies that take place in 24 hours, apparently.
Listen, I love Napoleon Dynamite.
I haven't seen any of the movies that you guys have said so far. So
I love Napoleon Dynamite. I'm always fine with it getting a shout out. But the court has ruled against you in this case, and it does not count.
You know what? I rule against myself in this case.
Well, there you go. Fair enough.
But it's about daily life.
I hold myself in contempt.
Yeah. Now I'm worried about what our number 2 and number 1 is.
No, they fit. They fit. It's fine.
Love Napoleon Dynamite. Absolutely love it. All right, Andrew, what's your number 3?
Number 3 is where I have Magnolia.
Okay.
You know me, I love some PTA. And I love me a spiderweb story where a whole bunch of people's stories intertwine, kind of like Crash.
Yeah.
This is a weird movie, especially the end with the frogs, which is, I guess, a real phenomenon that can happen. Blew my mind when I found that out. But I loved everybody's performance in this. I mean, Julianne Moore, that one scene where she's in the pharmacy, I'm like, whoa, where did it just takes you aback. And then there's John C. Reilly is great. And then, of course, Tom Cruise in one of his most dislikable characters ever, you know.
Yeah.
And then the late great Philip Seymour Hoffman. I love this movie so much. I really do. It says so much about not understanding who we are and where we come from. Like, on the surface, may not be the person you see on the surface may not be who they really are. It's I think it's a beautiful movie too.
I definitely agree. I will tell you there were two things that I tried not to put in my top 5, just again because I was trying to do something with like the spirit of the rule. One was I tried to make sure
you can do it with the spirit of the rule.
no.
Oh, it's I get it.
I'm
It's in the
obeying-
life of one person.
Right. So like,
Yeah.
Lo, just to be clear, I'm first the rules and then the spirit of the rule. Like I'm centering, you're expanding.
Yeah.
Okay. So anyhow,
I
yes.
understand that. Yeah.
And this is about a bunch of people, and honestly, 1917 was the only one where I kind of stretched that but it's just those two characters. It's kind of day in the life of those two characters, and they're together the whole time. But yeah, I tried to kind of think of it as more of who is our central character, and actually, my number 3 will stretch that part of it a little bit. But yeah. But
we've
anyhow,
all
but no,
stretched
I'm with
the
you.
rule in our own way.
Yeah.
Like some of them stretched so far that
Some
it
more than others.
snapped.
Yeah.
But
yeah, some of
all
them wouldn't be called stretching so much as just breaking,
Yeah.
whatever the case may be.
all right. So what do you got at 3?
My number 3 is Do the Right Thing. This is I considered this a day in the life, and there are several characters in this, but I think we're really about the Spike Lee character in this movie and kind of waking up with that and taking that through the day. So yeah, what are you thinking, Andrew? Did I mess it up?
No. I actually think that you're a lot more on the mark than what you think. Can you guys hear Roland barking? Real
Oh,
quick?
you're
It's
fine.
not-
Yeah, dogs bark.
Okay.
It's okay.
Yeah.
I wouldn't
My
be bad.
child was just screaming in the background, and I
yeah.
muted my microphone. We're good.
So I think that Harlem community feels like its own like cohesive person, like everybody
Sure.
just adds something to one person.
Mhm.
So I would actually give that more credit than I think you're giving it. I think that Do the Right Thing, which was in my honorable mentions, is a very valid choice. A lot more than Magnolia.
I honestly think it is about the Mookie character mostly and kind of how he's processing his community. But yeah, no, you're right. It definitely feels like that, and you can feel this day, and that is one of the reasons I did want to mention is it really just feels like you can feel what this day means to everybody. You can feel the heat of that day.
Oh gosh,
yeah.
I get sweaty watching that movie.
Yeah,
Just like turn on the fans.
For me, it remains one of those movies that I encourage people to go back and watch. I'd have to look up the exact year it came out. I think it was 1989. I think it was 89. And that was, what, 30
You're right.
years
Yeah,
ago?
you're right. 89. So yeah.
31 years ago. And it is a movie about exactly what we continue to go through over
Nothing's changed.
and over and over again. And it came out 31 years ago. And, it's just one of those, it's one of those sobering things to watch a movie like that. And just know that for so long, so many voices have been crying out and saying, please listen to us. This is happening. And it just takes several awakenings, moments of awakening to continue to happen.
Was this Spike Lee's first movie directing?
I think so.
What a way to
think
announce
so.
yourself,
It may have been his debut, but we can look it up later. But but it was definitely, if it wasn't, it was close.
Yeah,
So,
if it was his first movie, what a way to announce yourself to the world. Like, hey, here I am.
Yeah.
So, yeah, good job. I love that movie.
All right, that's number 3 for me. So, Lo, I think we're ready for your number 2.
My number 2 is Ferris Bueller's Day Off.
Hey, that counts. That's a perfect choice.
Thanks. I like how you're excited that it counts.
It's great. It's perfect.
Yeah, I mean, it's sort of like Breakfast Club, for obvious reasons. And that it's sort of a zany movie. It's not exactly the average day, but I do get the sense that this is not an abnormal day for Ferris. I feel like his character is sort of larger than life, but I think that it's a very fun movie that also somehow manages to deal with a few heavy topics. And I've watched it more times than I can possibly count. It's one of my all-time favorites.
It's a great choice. Absolutely great choice. Andrew, what do you got at number 2?
So I'm trying to see where I had Magnolia on my top 100 movies of all time. I guess it doesn't matter. I was going to give you context for where everything was on my list.
Mhm.
But number 46 is where I had my number two. We're at number two, right?
Mhm.
Yes, you're number
Okay.
2. Yep.
Yeah. Number 46 on my top 100 movies of all time is where I have 12 Angry Men.
Yeah. I knew you were going to
Um,
put this one on there. I have it in my honorable mentions. It's certainly
Yeah.
worthy of conversation.
You know how much I love this movie.
I do.
It's remarkable. I mean, everybody is on point. There's something about a movie that feels like a play that whenever it's adapted to screen, I don't know why, but it really draws me in. I know Ma Rainey's Black Bottom wasn't a play, or if it was, I didn't know that. But it just felt like it, and I felt like I was more invested. Same with Fences, same with this. There's just something about it that just makes it feel more personal because it's a confined space that way.
Did you say Ma Rainey's wasn't a play or was?
I said I can't remember if it was or was not.
It was. It's an August
It was.
Wilson play. Yeah.
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 Oh, I did know that. I'm an
Yeah.
idiot. Yeah.
No, you're good.
Because Fences. Yeah. But oh man, Ma Rainey's. I need to put that on my honorable mentions list. That's a great movie. But yeah, as far as 12 Angry Men, I love me a good court drama, and this is, if nothing else, this feels like Aaron Sorkin.
Yeah.
Before Aaron Sorkin, but yeah, I love it. It's great.
Yeah. No, it's a great choice. Definitely a great choice. My number 2 is Gravity.
Gravity.
This is where I have Gravity. This is one of my favorite movies of all time. One of the things I love about it is how we follow the journey of this day for the Sandra Bullock character, all the things that she goes through. It is a movie about being reborn in many ways, both in kind of the metaphorical sense of what's going on and also in the visual sense. They're striking visuals that, look like umbilical cords and amniotic, fluid, and even the movie ends with, her first steps. And so there's this really interesting thing about what it means to be human and what it means to be enter into life and to value life just because it's life. It's really interesting. I love Gravity, and I love what Quaron has done with this movie. So that is my number 2. All right, we're ready for our number 1s. We haven't had a single bit of crossover this week. That's pretty amazing. Well done, guys.
Yeah.
So far, Gravity is the only movie of either of your lists that I've seen. I told you, I looked at the list of these movies and I was like, there's a lot on here that I recognize, but for whatever reason.
Well, I mean, it's no Napoleon Dynamite, but it's.
Yeah.
I was panicking because I couldn't think of movies that
You're
would fit
good.
on this list.
If there's one thing you never need to do about it being on Sif Pop, it's panic.
Fake panicking.
You're
Not
gonna
like
be
actual
fine.
panicking.
You're gonna be fine.
Okay, but my number 1.
Yes, Lo. What is your number 1?
My number 1 is, now I did not rewatch it, but I am 90% sure this takes place over a day or maybe a little longer than a day, is Hail Caesar.
Oh, interesting. I didn't have that on my list, but
it might be that it takes place over a weekend because I haven't watched it.
I think it does. I think it takes place over a few days, but yeah.
Yeah, but it definitely has that sort of, you're staying on the main character, you're with him through most scenes. It's him dealing with, and like I said, is he a producer? I didn't even rewatch it, but like
it's definitely about the movie industry,
Lo. Industry, I know. But you're with him, you're watching him deal with all of these little fires that he has to put out, and it is very much centered on a day in his life, in his job. And again, I think it might be more than one day, but it's definitely not more than like a weekend, like 2 or 3 days. But I felt like it fit.
Lo, we're just going to give you a pass. We're just going to give you a pass. We're just going to let you kind of talk about the movies you want to talk about. It's okay.
So sorry.
Hail Caesar is a great film. Again, I have no qualms with Hail Caesar ever being brought up and mentioned for people who haven't thought about watching it in a while.
Would that it were to take place in one day.
Yeah.
Would that it were one day. Would that it were. All right, Andrew, what is your number 1?
So it turns out Magnolia is not my top 100 movies of all time because I forgot I redid my list to break up, like sequels and stuff like that. So
Sure, yeah.
only two. But this next movie is my number 10 favorite movie of all time. Takes place in one day. Collateral.
Oh, I didn't even think of Collateral. Is that one day?
It's one.
I
Actually,
guess
it's real time. It's only like 4 hours.
It's true.
Yeah.
I guess that's true.
Yeah.
Yeah, I hadn't thought about that. It's been a hot second since I've seen it. I keep saying I need to go back and watch it again because I really do like that movie. But yeah.
I think it's because so much happens in that 4 hour period and there's so much character development. Like Jamie Foxx is nowhere near the same person he was at the beginning of this movie than he is at the end of this movie. For those, Lo, I'm going to give you a synopsis of this. I think you'll really enjoy this. So Jamie Foxx is a cab driver in LA. He picks up a fare out at the airport, and it's Tom Cruise. He says, I need to make 3 stops tonight. I need to do some business transactions, and then I need to get back to the airport, and I need to fly out of here. So he drops him off at the first spot, and a dead body falls on the cab. Turns out Tom Cruise is an assassin, and he then takes Jamie Foxx hostage for the rest of the night to drive him around LA so he can kill people. And and the journey that you see Jamie Foxx go on, because at the beginning of this movie, he's just really timid and meek. He's like, hey, yeah, get in the cab, it's okay. And the person that he becomes throughout this movie, it's not an action movie at all. It's actually very philosophical because Tom Cruise just... by the way, Tom Cruise looks old in this movie. He's got like grayish white hair, and he just looks just not really that suave young debonair guy you see him in every other movie. But he's talking to him about how valuable life is to him and stuff like that. And then you really understand, like, oh, there's more to this movie than what you think you're initially getting into. I honestly think it's one of the greatest movies of all time. I watch it. I don't even know how many times I've seen this movie. A lot. I'll just say a lot. Yeah.
Producer Phil saying in the chat that Collateral is very much like Locke. It's Jamie Foxx driving a car talking about murder.
Yeah, yes. Yeah, concrete murder, close enough. Yeah.
Different
you can murder. You can murder somebody with concrete.
Sure.
So, yeah. It's a sequel. Yeah.
So I've heard, at least. Yeah.
Yeah. I've seen enough in movies. Send them to sleep at the fishes.
Good choice. My
number one
is Groundhog Day. Interesting, kind of the repeating things concept. Most repeating things movies would be in this category. Happy Death Day would be very similar, taking course over one day. Palm Springs. Palm Springs is interesting because they do talk about trying to stretch it for days, but the movie itself really kind of takes place in that central day. So these kind of movies do kind of fit that bill, and this is the granddaddy of them all, and one of my favorite movies of all time. I could watch this probably every night forever and have fun doing it. It's just an absolute treasure, both because it's funny, both because it's Bill Murray, and also because it is extremely philosophical and deep. Yeah. There's a real depth to this movie that I love as well. So
I'm not the God. I'm a God.
That's right. At least I don't think I am.
I don't think I'm the God, but I am a God.
Yeah. So anyhow, that is my number one day in the life movie.
So, did you guys know that I have seen no movies? Apparently, I literally have seen all the movies that have been brought up in this conversation that I didn't bring up myself. I have seen Gravity.
Well, good. Wow. Gravity's a great movie. Now you have movies to see.
I've been writing down movies.
There you go.
Have a list.
There you go. Get it on your Letterboxd watch list. And
I mean, I've heard of Groundhog Day. I don't need to write Groundhog Day. But
yeah, man. Groundhog Day is one of those movies that you could watch over and over. All right, let's talk about honorable mentions. Before we do, and Andrew, I'm just going to let you kind of list off yours, and then if I have any left over, I will do them. But I did want to mention in the chat, somebody mentioned Night of the Living Dead as one that they
I didn't think of that one. That's actually really good.
I hadn't thought about that one either as well. But Andrew, what were some of your other honorable mentions?
Whew. Are you ready for this? Okay,
yeah,
here
sure,
we go
for it.
Dr. Strangelove. That takes place in one day.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
You can start a nuclear war and end the entire human race in one day. It turns out.
Don't tell me, please.
The Goonies. I love the Goonies.
Yep, Goonies is a good choice.
Yeah,
One day.
Yep.
Huh.
Yeah.
all
That
one
would have
day.
made my list.
I think this movie gets crapped on, I guess you could say, for a lack of a more adult term. I think Phone Booth is a really good movie.
I had it in
I
my
think-
honorable mentions.
Did you? I like Phone Booth. I think it's really good. Since we talked about Locke, as soon as somebody mentions Locke, the other movie that immediately pops into my head is Buried with
Yes, I
Ryan
had that in my
Reynolds.
honorable mentions as well. Yeah.
Yeah, that is a hauntingly dark movie.
Mm-hmm.
Like, there's no. It's Ryan Reynolds buried underground, alive, and he's just calling people on his phone to try and find him. It's terrifying. If you're claustrophobic, it is not a movie for you. Yeah. Super Bad. That takes place in one day.
Sure.
Cloverfield. Oh, you and me, we love Cloverfield.
Yep. Got it down.
Die Hard, we mentioned.
Mm-hmm.
I think I've mentioned this next movie before. It's a German movie called Run Lola Run. Have you?
Oh,
either of you
definitely
seen
one of my
this?
favorites. Yeah, it's in my honorable mentions.
I
Yeah.
haven't seen it. I've heard of it.
What a soundtrack! That movie is such a good soundtrack.
Yeah.
Speed is great.
Speed
Training
One Day?
Speed is one day. Oh no, it's not.
No,
Because
I don't think it is.
because the first half of that movie is like in the elevator.
Yeah.
That's not the first half. Yeah, forget
The
Speed.
first
Sorry,
one. Yeah.
that's my Napoleon Dynamite for the day. It feels like it's all one. Because it's the day in the life.
emotions that it
Because it's the
evokes.
day in the life of a cop. You know.
Yes, totally.
Yeah.
Totally.
Training Day. There's a movie that's one day. Yeah.
It's right in the
so
title.
it's yes. So is Dazed and Confused. My Dinner with Andre. that's a movie. Lola, you're gonna love the Lola. You're gonna love this synopsis. It's two guys having dinner.
Mm-hmm.
I'm aware of My Dinner with Andre because I really like Community.
Yeah.
And they did an entire episode
Oh,
Good point.
yeah,
about
there's
That's a
the
good point.
episode
Yeah,
where,
yeah, it's a
yeah.
good point.
That's actually, I think that might be more that Community episode might be more entertaining than the actual My Dinner with Andre.
Mhm.
Glengarry Glen Ross, Escape from New York, and I wouldn't be me if I didn't mention a Western. And I'm going to throw out High Noon.
Nice. Good choice. Lots of good choices there. Some I didn't include that I really, really love just because I wanted to include ones that kind of felt more the spirit of the rule. But United 93 is one of my favorite movies of all time. Certainly takes place
God.
in one day, but it's very much a real-time kind of thing. Rope, of course, is a real-time movie, takes place in the same day. Let's see. The Before movies, those actually would probably qualify pretty well. Like Before Midnight, Before Sunset, Before Sunset, yeah. So I wanted to mention those. Panic Room is another one that's worth mentioning.
Yes,
with
it is
Jodie
one day.
Foster.
Yeah.
It's like a single night.
Yeah, right. Let's see. You mentioned Run a Little Run. Premium Rush. Do you remember the movie Premium Rush?
Is that the Joseph Gordon-Levitt bike
Sure
movie?
is.
That
Sure is.
movie was awful.
You've mentioned multiple movies that I wanted to put on my top 5, but I was like, no, this doesn't fit because I got so caught up in like I was thinking about having just watched The Assistant, being like, no, this has to be like daily, average, mundane life. That
I see.
I thought of Cloverfield and was like, it doesn't fit. I thought of Premium Rush, it doesn't fit. Like, so I had movies that would have fit. Ugh.
Premium Rush fits pretty well, actually.
Yeah.
That it really is a day in his life.
Except for the
It's a
movie.
very
Except
strange
best
day,
ever.
though.
Yeah, right.
I
Dude,
love Premium Rush, but I'm a huge Joseph Gordon-Levitt fan.
Yeah.
So.
I liked it as well. Dude, Where's My Car? Is worth mentioning. And I think that was all. Oh, Arsenic and Old Lace is certainly worth mentioning in this category as well. And then one.
Yeah, go ahead.
One that's coming out that I have already seen that I will highly recommend is One Night in Miami, which is coming out very soon.
Oh, that's the Malcolm X movie, isn't it? Oh no, that's the Malcolm X, Muhammad Ali, and there's two others.
Correct. Yes.
Is it Buddy Rich? Is it? No.
I will have to look it up. But it's definitely Malcolm X, Muhammad Ali, and two others. You have it absolutely correct.
Thank you.
which is probably a bad way to say it. So I will look up the other two. But what else were you going to mention, Andrew?
A movie that came out this year that I forgot about, but it does take place in one day. 7,500. We were talking about Joseph Gordon-Levitt. It's a rough movie to watch. So if you like Joseph Gordon-Levitt, don't watch it solely for that. It's a terrorist taking a plane hostage movie, and he's a pilot, and he has to lock the door and keep the terrorists back there with the passengers. And it is rough movie, but insanely good performances all around, especially by one of the young kids.
Yeah. Let's see. In the chat, somebody says, I've always had a lot of fun with Dread and Bad Times at the El Royale. I do think that those might qualify, actually.
Dread does count, and that would have made my list probably. I think Locke, yeah. But I love Dread.
The other two were Sam Cooke and Jim Brown. So the four of them having conversations about race in America, being a black business person, those kind of things. It's really powerful. It's good stuff. I think y'all will really enjoy it.
I like Phil saying you have to mention 24 because the entire season takes place in one day.
Day in the life for the season. Sure, might as well. All right, let's talk about our buried treasure. What's that one thing in any area of pop culture that you want to make sure people know about? We will let our guest go last. I will kick us off with Cobra Kai Season 3. This show it's just my favorite thing. I really enjoy it. I've mentioned this to a few people, and I'm mentioning it here as well, because I think we have misfocused on why the MCU is amazing, and I'm going to clarify this. The MCU is amazing and fun and great, and people will use the phrase cinematic universe. It's right there in MCU, and like the idea of a cinematic universe is what makes it great. And I think that's only part of the issue. The issue is not just the world building of the universe. It's the canon unification part of it that I think I really love. The idea that you can have a Captain America movie, a Thor movie, an Iron Man movie, and then unify the canon of all those worlds into one movie. That's really interesting to me. And we've talked about the reason the DC stuff feels a little hollow sometimes is because they kind of got it in reverse. They did the cinematic universe first, and then, a lot of the pieces. And so it wasn't about a unification. It was about a division of some stuff that we already knew. Other place we've seen this recently, Mandalorian Season 2. There's a canon unification going on in Season 2 of The Mandalorian where you're taking parts of canon from Rebels or whatever, and you're unifying it with the greater world. And that's what's happening in Cobra Kai, and I think is one of the reasons I love it so much. It's taking all of the Karate Kid movies and unifying the canon of all those movies in a really interesting way. And Season 3 continues to do that. I don't want to spoil anything, but yes, there's Karate Kid 2 stuff all throughout this. There's Okinawa stuff. It's just really doing a great job of taking the parts of movies that maybe themselves even weren't all that great, but building them into a universe that says all this stuff is real, it exists, and it means something, and recontextualizing it for us. And that's what Cobra Kai is about. It's about recontextualizing these characters that we already knew, starting with Johnny Lawrence in Season 1. I've found this very interesting, and there's some real good stuff going on with Kreese in Season 3 that I won't spoil, and just overall, even if you're just familiar with the Karate Kid movies, I think you're going to have a blast with Cobra Kai. So I'm glad to see Season 3. It is out on Netflix, as are all 3 seasons, I think, now on Netflix. So
yeah. I love the fact that Kreese in this season they're trying to humanize him without trying to de-vilify him.
Sure.
He's still awful and evil, but they try and make you understand, quote unquote, like everything. But I'm with you. My favorite thing is that the unification, not only the unification, but they're able to cast every single person again, no matter how minute of a role they had, they got that exact person to come back. And that is that's insane. I don't think a lot of people would realize how difficult that is to do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Are
you watching Cobra Kai?
I'm not.
Okay. Yeah, it's worth it.
I didn't watch the Karate Kid movies until I was an adult. So I just don't have, I think, a lot of the nostalgia
sure, totally, yeah.
So I haven't,
I Yeah, I will say this. I don't think that the show really relies on its nostalgia. I think it's just more interested in being a good show that has, a built-in history, I guess you could say.
Yeah.
Because it's not the same tone or vibe at all as the Karate Kid movies.
Yeah.
And the fact that the season ends with an amazing version of "I Can Feel It Coming in the Air Tonight,"
Yes.
like that scene gave me goosebumps. I got huge goosebumps from that.
Yeah.
So me up next.
Yeah, you're up next.
This works on several levels of buried treasure because it deals with buried treasure, and
Ooh.
I think that over time people have forgotten about it, so it's been buried. I'm going to go with Pirates of the Caribbean: The Curse of the Black Pearl.
Nice.
Yes.
Okay. I forgot that this is a good movie because
It's so good.
It got so covered up by the awfulness of all the sequels. It just got worse and worse.
No.
Worse. Okay, Dead Man's Chest is good. Dead Man's
2 and
Chest
3
is
are good. 4 is okay. 5 is poop.
But what I'm saying is like it's just there's this stank on this franchise right now.
It overstayed
It's
its welcome, yeah.
Yeah. But I rewatched the first one, and after I got done, man, I want to watch more of those movies. And then I realized they did make more. I'm like, oh, but this was so good. I mean, Johnny Depp's character was, very rambunctious and like over the top, but he wasn't stupid, silly. Like there was a method to the madness that I think he lost in the other movies, to where it just became like he was trying to do an impersonation of the character he created instead of just being that character. But I rewatched it, and there are some cinematic shots in this. Like there's the shot near the end where the pirates are walking underwater, and then they go, you see them in their skeletal form, then they go in the shadow of the boat and they become human again, and then they walk to the other side and they become the skeletons. I'm like, that's a brilliant shot. That might be like one of the most amazing shots ever. And there's no ridiculous like a obstacle course thing that they're doing, like fighting on like a turning wheel or anything like that. It's just the movie is interested in being a good movie.
Yeah.
I love the first Pirates of the Caribbean movie, and I forgot that I love the first Pirates of the Caribbean movie. So yes, go back and at least, if you've never seen them, you're doing yourself a disservice to not watch the first one.
Yeah. Big fan of POTC, TCOTBP.
Paraka.
It's good stuff. Lolo, what you got?
Yes, I have one of my all-time favorite movies that people have either not seen or they haven't seen like since it came out, which is Reign of Fire.
Yes,
this movie's great.
Yeah, I feel like I end up bringing up obscure Christian Bale movies a lot on this show because it has certainly happened before. We've talked about Newsies,
Swing Kids.
Yeah. So I have a story with this movie where down the street from where I grew up, or one of the places I grew up, there was a movie rental place, and they had this like deal where you could get 3 movies on Friday and return them on like by Sunday, and it was for like a deal, and my family would do it every week. And I was an only child until I was much older, and I got this movie like
nice.
every week for months until my parents were like, oh my gosh, we're buying it so that you can just have it and watch it whenever you want, and you can rent something else. So it's not particularly deep. It reminds me a lot of Pacific Rim, and that you think of the premise, which by the way, it is about dragons who have taken over the world, and it's a post-apocalyptic movie where there are dragons, but it's like it takes place in 2020 as well, by the way. But it reminds me of Pacific Rim. I know, right? Just one more thing in 2020. It reminds me of Pacific Rim, that you think about robots fighting monsters. That's going to be like just a silly, like, blockbuster that has no depth to it, but then they really went hard and tried to give it that depth so that it is a silly, fun blockbuster, but there's more to it. That's how I feel about Reign of Fire. I feel like
I'm with you.
Gave the characters so much more to do, and there's a really great friendship between Christian Bale and Gerard Butler's character that I cry almost every time I watch that movie, and I've seen it over 100 times. It's one of my favorite movies, and I just think that more people should watch it, and that it's really good and it holds up.
I
mean, it's crazy. You mentioned Christian Bale, Gerard Butler, and Matthew McConaughey. Like,
yeah, that's what I was going to bring up.
How can you go wrong in this? Like, it's really good.
I think that while this might be McConaughey's most diverse role he's ever done, because it doesn't feel like anything else he's done. He doesn't look like McConaughey at all. He's a skin-headed, just walking tank. Where he jumps with the axe is still one of the coolest. Like one of those, like you get a shot of testosterone every single time that scene comes on. But I would actually say that there's more to this movie that I find that it's not just a great like fighting dragon movie. I think that this movie is saying something, that there's a difference between surviving and living. Like they're both fighting for something different. Christian Bale is fighting to survive. McConaughey is fighting to live. And I think that this movie does a very good job, and I was surprised when I first saw the movie that it tries to do such a good job of making this world make sense. There's a reason for these dragons to come up that I'm like, I buy into that. You're not trying to oversell me on the science of everything. You're giving me enough information to where I can go plausible. not like, no, that's real, but that's plausible. That just makes it a really interesting and fascinating movie. I'm so glad you brought that up, because I'm going to watch it again today now.
I watched it on January 1st. It was my first movie that I watched this year.
Yeah. It's a good movie.
It really is. We are unanimously behind Reign of Fire, and you choosing to check it out. It is.
I really whiffed it with Napoleon Dynamite, but I brought it.
Brought it all back.
Oh yeah, you saved it. You saved it.
Just when I think I'm out, you pull me back in. Nicely done. Nicely done. We did it, guys. We did a podcast.
Woo!
Congratulations to us for doing something that millions of people do every week. Thank you so much for joining us today for Sif Pop. It is part of the Studio DNA Podcast Network. You can find out more about other shows on the network at studiodna.media or by searching Studio DNA in your podcast player. Huge thanks to Andrew for hanging out again today.
Thank you, buddy.
Huge thanks to producer Phil for producing the audio and video shows.
Thanks, Phil.
And a big thank you to Drew for putting together the graphics for the show.
Golf clap.
And thank you, of course, to Lolo for hanging out with us today. Lolo, where do you want to send people? Like, where can people find you? What do you want to promote?
The Curious Low on Twitter is basically where you can find all of my various craziness throughout the internet.
All right. Very, very good. Well, we are glad to have you on, of course. It's always a pleasure. Much love and gratitude to our Sif Pop members as well for making this possible. Support starts at $3 a month, and you can check out all the details at patreon.com/siftpop. Lots of ways to connect with us. Feel free to rate, comment, or leave a review at Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen. That really does help us. Or you can email us if you have a question or a topic you want us to talk about. That's feedback@siftpop.com. And finally, if you're having a good time, your movie-loving friends will probably like the show too. So make sure you let them know about it, and that listening is much easier than, well, being a woman in the workplace. We will see you next week with our first of a two-part 2020 Sifties celebration. We're going to do our Sifties the next couple weeks, so stay tuned for that, and we'll catch you then.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you to our video audience. We love you. We appreciate you. Appreciate you hanging out with us. Lots of fun in the comments, and we will see you guys next week as well.